Welcome to the Whole Child Sleep podcast, where we help families nurture dreams and raise wholeness. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Whole Child Sleep podcast. I am your host, Fire Hartsign, and today is a Q&A week. We are taking a question from Jordan, and she's asking a question related to our topic from last week, which is how to get your kiddo to sleep through the night. Jordan asks, curious if any other toddler moms are experiencing this with their littles. My 2-year-old and my 4.5-year-old boys don't sleep all night. They wake up multiple times, and our 4.5-year-old still sleeps with us in the middle of the night. We are trying everything to get these two on a good sleep pattern, as we have 4-week-old babes. I have never used melatonin or any other sleeping methods with them. I am just one tired mama hoping for a little relief. We have a sound machine, and they do start the night off sleeping in bottom bunk together. But my older son only stays in there for a few hours, and in result wakes our 2-year-old. Jordan, how exhausting. It's so hard to heal from childbirth while you are being woken, sending you lots of restful wishes. I trust that this podcast will be helpful for you to help relieve some of that exhaustion. I want to encourage you to go listen to 2 podcasts. Number 1 is the Ultimate Readiness Checklist for Sleep Training Your Kiddo. And the other one is How to Get Your Kiddo to Sleep Through the Night. Those 2 podcasts, I believe, will be very helpful in this process as you help your 2 older kiddos sleep more restfully at night. There are 4 factors I will go over here with you, Jordan. And number 1 is internal schedule. We all have what's called a chronotype. Our chronotype tells our bodies what best time to be awake and active and what the best times are for resting. So those are our built-in schedules. When we operate outside of that schedule, our bodies compensate by increasing adrenaline to keep us moving and keep us awake when we should be sleeping or resting. I find that this is a very common factor for a lot of children and people in general that causes sleep disruption. So I would firstly encourage you to evaluate your children's daily schedule and ask yourself if it aligns with what their body needs and prefers. Number 2 is digestive health. Go take a listen to those podcasts I mentioned earlier, especially the Ultimate Readiness Checklist for Training Your Kiddo. I want you to go over that checklist, which will help you determine if your kiddo may be experiencing some digestive issues that may be impacting your kiddos. What I see very often, Jordan, is a recommendation to supplement with magnesium. There are 2 things that come up for me when I see that recommendation. And this goes for melatonin as well. Is number 1, if we are deficient in melatonin or magnesium, why is that so? Is it because our children are not consuming enough of those micronutrients, or are we not consuming enough precursors for our bodies to produce something like melatonin? Or is our body simply not absorbing the nutrients that our body needs to sleep restfully? And that goes back to digestive health. If our gut is inflamed, we often have difficulty absorbing the nutrients that we need to function and sleep optimally. So that's number 2. Number 3 is autonomy. We all do best when we know what we're doing. This goes for everything in life. I will use the example of tying our shoes. So if our children need help tying their shoe and they go to school and they have no one to help them at school, they're going to have difficulty tying their own shoe at school. Same goes with sleep. If they need someone even just there to be able to fall asleep, they're going to have difficulties falling back to sleep. It is so helpful for our children's overall health and well-being to help encourage them and support them in learning how to downregulate for sleep. Number 3 is uncertainty. We want to address any uncertainty as it relates to parental support at night. We want our children to know, when you wake up, this is how I will respond. And we want our response to be kind and clear. And sometimes that clarity leads to some boundaries. So I want to encourage you and your partner, if you have one, to read a plan as to how to respond to your kiddos at night when they wake up. So, Jordan, these are all the factors I encourage you to consider when helping your 2 kiddos learn to fall asleep on their own. Absolutely doable. I suggest using the Sleep Baby Shuffle. It's a fantastic approach, especially for this age group, to help them learn to fall asleep on their own with nurturing and supportive presence of their parents. So, hope this all is helpful, Jordan. Please reach out with any questions you might have, and I hope you all have a great week. Thank you for listening to the Whole Child Sleep Podcast. For references to articles discussed in this podcast or for evidence on the topics that we've discussed on this podcast, please look in the description below, or you can find the articles linked in our blog at curesleep.us. I want to give you an idea of what you can expect in terms of structure of this podcast moving forward. You can expect 1 podcast a week, and we will cover a topic for 2 weeks. The first week, you can expect the podcast to be more educational and informational. The following week will be more of a Q&A covering the same topic. If you have a question that you would like us to answer during the Q&A podcast, please send them in at 406-551-4083. And if you've found this podcast to be helpful, we ask that you share it. We would love to reach more tired families. We also ask that you subscribe and like and give us a 5-star review. This also helps us reach more tired families. We hope you have a beautiful day, and we will talk to you next week. By listening to this podcast, you understand and agree to the following. The content of this podcast offers the opinions of Meyer Hartzheim and her guests, and it is not intended as medical advice. It serves as an informational purpose. For personalized and medical concerns, consult your healthcare professional. The views and opinions in this podcast are our own and don't represent our employees or affiliates. The views of the guests in this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect that of Cure Sleep Group. Our podcast and website are not for legal purposes, such as establishing a standard of care or expert witness testimony. We don't guarantee the accuracy of statements or opinions. We appreciate your assistance in maintaining content accuracy. If you find errors in our podcast or blogs, please reach out via email to support@curesleep.us. This podcast is owned by Cure Sleep LLC and presented by the Whole Child Sleep Podcast. Thank you for tuning in.